Alright, so everybody's heard the phrase, if you're not testing or guessing, is the Haven Central Air Monitor. I got it installed here in our upflow air handler. You can see this is a pan return. There's the air handler. So this is kind of the most laminar airflow it's going to be able to get in this position is that right now. I used a piece of sheet metal and some magnets up top to hold it so I can move that sensor out of the way and change the filter. And this sensor measures air velocity, so that way you know you're getting an accurate air sampling. It measures PM 2.5 in micrograms per cubic meter. It measures volatile organic compounds in parts per billion. It measures dry bulb temperature, so you're going to get your return temp there. And it measures relative humidity. So this is the first real lab grade sensor that you're going to be able to get in the field right now. And really what makes this thing so great is the accuracy of the sensor, and then also the software it's hooked up to in the app, which I'll show here in a minute. But this is wired up to 24 volts at the minimum outside air damper here. So it can actually be set up for anything from 12 to 24 volts AC or DC for the power for this sensor cluster. So it's really versatile and rugged. Been really happy with it so far. I haven't had any connectivity problems. It does connect to Wi-Fi, so that's how it communicates with the software in your app. So you can see that real-time data, and it uses that in tandem with a central air controller that you can hook up, which is basically a couple dry contacts that you can use to allow the software to control like a blower motor, or in this case our minimum outside air damper, in order to achieve air quality targets. Alright, this is the Haven app. So it shows HVAC fan active. That means it's moving at least 60 feet per minute as far as airflow goes across the sensor. When it's talking about filtration, it's looking at particles that are 2.5 microns in diameter or less per cubic meter. So that's a concentration of very small particles, basically. When it's talking about ventilation, it's looking at volatile organic compounds in parts per billion. So that's also a concentration it's looking at. It looks at return dry bulb temperature. So it's looking for a target of 68 to 76. And for relative humidity, it's looking at a target of 30 to 60%. So I don't know if it actually tells you what the targets are for air filtration and air ventilation, but it'll tell you here. If you slide over, it'll show up as yellow or red if the PM 2.5 VOCs or humidity is out of the target range. And because this sensor is looking at air quality data like PM 2.5 and volatile organic compounds and air velocity, it can actually tell you and kind of predict based on conditions when you're going to need to replace your filter based on the data, and tell you based on live data if you need to replace your filter or not. So that's one thing that would be really handy. So that way you're not replacing your filter any more than you need to, but you're also not waiting too long to replace your filter. Once you install the Haven monitor and it collects data for at least a week, it actually gives you a score here. So see a live score, daily, weekly, and then the last month. So this actually breaks down based on PM 2.5 concentration for filtration, VOC concentration for ventilation, humidity and relative humidity, and then air movement, which is determined by air velocity, but it is really looking for hitting at least, I think it's 10 to 15 minutes of run time for your air handler each hour. So that way that kind of tells you, okay, we're getting accurate data for these sensors because we're moving air across that sensor cluster enough minutes per hour. So the higher your circulation subscore basically means you're getting more. Basically means you're going to get as accurate air quality data with these sensors as possible. And so, as best as I can tell, Haven looks like they want at least a week of runtime after you make changes. And initially, of course, after you put in the central air monitor sensor cluster, before you can have accurate data to look at for troubleshooting problems. So, to be able to differentiate a chronic problem from a acute problem. So chronic being long-term kind of, problem that just exists in a building or a house because of, conditions that are outside the control of occupants, or maybe even things that are in the control of people in the building. But it also will give you, when you look under the subscore here, it'll give you things it recommends to improve your score and things that will hurt your score. So it does that for filtration, ventilation, and then humidity control. So, and then of course also circulation. But so that's really handy for helping troubleshoot and give a good idea of what your next step should be when you're troubleshooting air quality problems.